Welcome to the Press Box. I'm Ryan Thorburn, joined as always by Steve Mims. Steve, it's Oregon versus Michigan State, the game everyone's been looking forward to since January 12th. It's the first top 10 matchup at Spartan Stadium since 1966 when number 1 Notre Dame and number 2 Michigan State played to a 10-all tie. I don't think it's going to be a 10-all tie this week. How do you kind of see this matchup going?
Yeah, and kudos to both programs for setting it up. Oregon and Michigan State, when it was scheduled a couple years ago, we saw with Oregon and Tennessee when that was scheduled for a home and home. By the time those games came around, Tennessee was down in the dumps, and it wasn't really the high-profile game that you expected when it was organized. Now, last year, it was number 7 versus number 3. Now they go to East Lansing, and it's number 5 versus number 7. So kudos to both programs for being strong and setting this up as, and it's a benefit for both programs. Obviously, the winner gets kind of the best non-conference win in the country early in the season, and the loser isn't exactly knocked out of anything because they're one loss to a team that will probably be ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the country by the time the week's over.
The media hype machine's already in play with game day is going to be there. The Goodyear Blimp is going to be there. But the coaches are doing a good job, too. I think John Neal compared Connor Cook, Michigan State's quarterback, to Tom Brady. And Mark D'Antonio is comparing Vernon Adams Jr. to Russell Wilson. So the quarterbacks alone are going to add some sizzle to 2 really good teams.
Yeah, we kind of got last year's Super Bowl matchup, Russell Wilson versus Tom Brady. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Connor Cook's been... last week they might have been a little underwhelming on offense in their win over Western Michigan, whereas Oregon obviously overwhelming with the 62. But then on the opposite side, look at the defenses. I think Michigan State was as good as everybody expected, and Oregon's, the questions that were there certainly weren't answered last week. So you look at maybe the strength is Michigan State's defense, Oregon's offense going up against each other, and then the considered weaknesses right now, Michigan State's offense going up against Oregon's defense, in particular pass defense, sets up for some great matchups to watch.
Yeah, and having Cook as your quarterback isn't really a weakness because he's considered an NFL first-round caliber guy, and really he's going to be the winningest quarterback in Michigan State history, and they've got about 4 guys in the NFL right now, 3 starters, I think. So very impressive guy, and he's got to be drooling over Oregon's secondary, or at least how they played against a spread offense last week in Eastern Washington. Very difficult game for the Ducks. They gave up a ton of yards, I think 5 touchdown passes. Was that just a bad matchup for young guys, or is that a concern throughout the season and especially Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a concern. It's one that everybody had from the beginning of the season. When you lose 3 of your 4 defensive backs, you figure, all right, we got some guys who can plug in, and everybody's credited Eastern Washington had a really good offensive game plan and throws the ball well, but that you still got to go back. That's an FCS team that had the quarterback it didn't expect to have this year, and really kind of lit Oregon up. It makes you wonder what some other schools will be able to do. So we'll see. Connor Cook definitely the guy. Now his receivers, pretty solid as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Does Oregon make them changes this week? Did they kind of see some things on film? Guys like Springs, Amadi, who hadn't played a whole lot before, make some changes. Certainly this is the week they have to do it.
Last year, I remember Scott Frost, I think his quote was, "They had us on the ropes," and it took Marcus Mariota some magicianship from him to get them off the ropes, and then they were off to the races late in that game. Obviously, no Mariota this year. Vernon Adams is the guy. What a big test for Vernon. Handled playing his old team about as well as you could, but their defense isn't very good. Michigan State's defensive line is considered among the best, if not the best. Looking forward to seeing how Vernon does against a real football team.
Yeah, and in particular, when you look back at Vernon, he's really handled those big moments pretty well. His biggest games at Eastern Washington were against Washington and Oregon State, and he played probably his best 2 games there. And last week, you mentioned your first game at home, you're playing against your old teammates and completed 75% of his passes, 200 and some odd yards, runs for 90. So far you keep thinking maybe the moment will catch up to him. It certainly hasn't yet. Maybe it does this week. He talked this week that Montana is the toughest place he's ever played. Now you're going to Spartan Stadium, but it seems like a guy who's kind of out there singing to himself, bobbing his head, dancing around, and I'd be surprised if we see anything other than that guy again on Saturday.
Yeah, I think the winner of this game, they're going to have a Heisman Trophy contender out of this game. It's probably going to be Cook on that side. I'm saying it could be Royce Freeman on the other side. If Oregon's able to run the ball down a really good defense's throat and win this game, based on Royce Freeman's start last week, I think he's the guy this year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, we probably saw Mariota's Heisman campaign really got going last year with the win over Michigan State, and and kept going from there. And there was this Heisman moment. You mentioned the flip. So, yeah, I mean, if you could see Freeman, break one where he sheds off a couple tacklers and gets some big, long touchdown run to kind of become his moment early on, I think he certainly jumps in the conversation early.
Well, I think this game's going to be in the 40s. I think either team could win. I'm leaning towards Michigan State because of the revenge factor, the home field advantage, and no Mariota. But we'll see, and hopefully that's a reverse jinx, and it's 13-10.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more closer to the 30s. But I think if either team gets in the 40, it's going to be that team who will win it. I have a hard time seeing Oregon scoring 35 against getting a much more than over 40 against a good Michigan State defense, and I just haven't seen Michigan State's offense do enough to think that they're going to come out and suddenly start piling up points against the top teams. So I think it's somewhere in the 30s, but I think it'll be an even match. I think it'll be kind of like last year, went down to the fourth quarter. I'd be surprised if we went in the fourth quarter with this thing out of hand either way.
All right, well, we'll find out, and stay tuned for all of our coverage from East Lansing at registerguard.com. Thanks for tuning in.